Huh? Yeah, relax. Amen. Okay, everybody. We are studying from the Tehillim, Lamed Ches. Tehillim Lamed Ches. David HaMelech is laid up. He is not well. And he knows it's because his own iniquity, and he is in deep repentance. He is beyond repentant. He is so remorseful as to have his whole body and his soul completely surrendered to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the process. Meaning he says, no part of me is whole. No part of me is well. He says, I'm overwhelmed with as my avonos that have overtaken me. He described it, Avru Roshi, over my head. Now we talk about something when we're knee deep. Then we have Boim Mayim Ad Nafesh, where the water is up to my nostrils. And David HaMelech said, Avru Roshi, my avonos and my sense, knowing how wrong I way over my head. To Pasuk Tes. End of Pasuk. Ein Mesom Bivsari, which means that I'm totally well. Sari means tmimus, meaning where something has some wholesomeness, some health to it. He says, Ein Mesom Bivsari. Pasuk Tes. Nefugosi. Powerful word, puga, which means something that's completely changed from the norm. And not in a positive way, because of weakness, overtaken by it, and then completely weakened. So weakness, as it were. When Yaakov is not to have a better sense of whether Yosef, so it's pogliboy. Rashi brings that posik as well.
Yeah, I'm the same. When they say something is expired?
No.
Nothing.
It's a different verse. Where someone is, cannot reconcile with something. You would say, "May ein hafugos," as in. She brings those examples. Vinid Casey ma'od. I'm so weakened, and nidkesi means crushed, literally pulverized. Toshev ad dako. So this is every word he could possibly express and describe with. And that's important because we are in need of humbling ourselves before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can say, so please help me. I've been so low. Well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, will ask you, well, just how low have you been? Let's hear this. Tell me about it. Before you get help from the doctor, what do you have to do? You have to tell them where it hurts. So, in a very simple mashal, well, if you want Baruch Hu, both physically and spiritually, and acknowledge where it hurts. Ad ma'od, I am crushed, verily. Interesting thing, he puts together shaga, which is to roar like a lion, minahamas libi. I roar because of nahamas libi, the pain and the sigh ma in my heart. Pasuk. You know everything that I need, everything that I'm dependent on, everything I'm desirous of, that I should be well again bodily, spiritually. My agony hidden from you. You see it all. I acknowledge it, and I acknowledge my ability. You see it all. So, as much as he's being so descriptive, he is saying that the depth of it, how every being is affected. You know, you see it. Pasuk Yud Aleph, Libi Schar, heart is surrounded, besieged, as it were. Schar Saviv. Libi Schar, Azavani Chaychi. My co-hosts have abandoned me. V'or einai, light of my eyes, to see, and to see in a positive, to understand and optimistically make my way forward. Amhein, ein iti. They as well, no longer with me. Complete loss and ability to handle, again, his bodily recovery, totally turning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in complete surrender and submission. Almost as if to say, I need to put back together again. I literally need from the beginning. I need to build myself Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. In my moral stance before, I have to start from the beginning, and then maybe physically, again, I'll have a new beginning. I'll have physical recovery and to good health. But I have to start from the beginning. FS, from zero. Now he says, again, hurtful it is that I have what's a good base? Those who supposedly love me, Virei, and my friends, Mineged, right as they watch this, Mineged means right in front of them. Mineged Nig'i Ya'amodu. They see my nega, they see my affliction. They stand right there, and they do nothing. And they won't have. And so many of them even take the weakness, take advantage of my vulnerability. But they had supposedly been my friends and my supporters. Ukroivai, those who were so close to me. Erachok amadu, from a distance. And that means not only that they won't help, they also won't have any sympathy. It means that they won't come to my aid in a spiritual way or believe that I can and will pick myself back up, that I deserve another chance. It's very depressing. Yeah, it is. But that's what we have to learn from here is that as important as it is, I'm sorry, it is more important to really deeply think about something that we've done that's mistaken and stew in it for a while. Like he says, over my Avonosai, Avru Roshi, and really, just be overwhelmed by a sense of how wrong I have been, or this is what I have been made to suffer. This is the situation I got myself in. But I have to have people who, who in the end, hopefully those who really are there to pick us back up. There was a famous yeshiva, Adelphi yeshiva, and the Rosh Yeshiva there was a very beautiful man, Rav David Trenksa. There was a book not long ago, 2, 3 years ago. Love them. That was his motto for how to educate. And he was in the yeshiva, and he was verily against, removing it. And that's even the words, if you think about it, throw them out. What do you talk about taking a kid and no longer able to be in our school? The words used are, he was thrown out of this yeshiva. The garbage, excuse me, something, refuse is thrown out. Human, let alone a Jewish child, it's not to be thrown out. The challenging circumstances he took in were very challenging, and there was a challenging situation, and it was which in any other yeshiva, this student would have been asked to leave. He would have been expelled, which is a slightly kinder way of describing the same process. Not as graphic, not as gross, but he would have expelled. Expelling him. So just in a very difficult. Had him come into his station wagon. That was the old car he had. And he drove the boy home to where he lived. And parents, what were they going to say, and how was it going to be? And just as they pull up to the driveway, and he looks at the young man, sees this young man finally realizes, says, "Oh." To the yeshiva, he says, turns around, pulls out of the driveway, and drives right back to Adolf. He wanted to bring him as far as he, the Rebbe, could, where it's Levi Scharchar, my heart is overwhelmed. I give up. I have no koach anymore. Or see a positive way. I have no optimism left in me. Oh boy, look what I've done. And those who love me, mineged, are standing up. Even those who are close to me are just far away. So that is how he brought him ultimately back. Thinking how close he wants his Talmud to be to his heart. But he had to take him first to the point, that kind of real remorsefulness, and then show him that love. The one who I can trust to do that is you, HaKadosh Baruch. See, that's what he'll take us for our own good to a place where we are like David HaMelech saying, Ein iti. My friends, not my own abilities. I have no more resources. I have nothing left but you. Pasuk Gimel. Vayinakshu nafshi. A mokesh is a stumbling block. Vayinakshu mevakshe nafshi means those who seek out my nefesh, who want to do it utterly, are setting up stumbling blocks, let alone that they're not helping. And those who are seeking bad things for my sake, dibru havos, they say things that are not. They'll explain the situation I'm in by saying, "Oh, that's because he's been corrupt, an honest king, and he was never a king who cared about Am Yisrael. He only cared about himself." And on and on and on, and they'll malign me terribly. Umirmos, in all kinds of deceitful ways. Mirma is deceit, spoken, verbal, written. Umirmos kalayom yagu. Say it means to say it in detail. It's to say it with higayon, with detail, and finding the right words. How do I really malign David? Destroy him with words, with a description that will cause him to be disrespected forever. Everyone's honest. And what is my response? David HaMelech says, I won't respond. I don't respond to them. Like, I will not hear. I hear nothing. Because again, if I trust on the one hand, and I know that this is all happening because of what I myself have done, bringing this all about. But why am I going to respond to this person? As much as it's difficult to just quiet and not respond, but that's part of Melech. Having dominance and having, reign over oneself. The first place where the Melech has great power and control is in his own being. Because you cannot claim to nor exhibit the ability to have control and guide leadership for anyone else if you can't lead yourself. So here in this Gevura of David HaMelech, he said, like I'm deaf, I hear nothing. Uche'ilein, like a mute, will not open up his mouth. Which is, on the one hand, huge control and acceptance of the fact that the good Lord has meted out, this is what I deserve. And it's over and above what I deserve because they're taking it too far. That's up to HaKadosh. I'm like a person who hears nothing, and there's no accusations to be leveled against, no rebuke or criticism. How can you say something like that? Don't you know it's not true? Why are you not telling the truth? Why can I do this and how and why am I not responding? Pesach Tezayin, that's the last pasuk for today. Because I have only hope. Hope means to turn in trust for help. Echal Moshe es Pnei Hashem after the Chet Ha'egel. Parsha Vayechal on days of fast, on fast days, because and Moshe hopes for and trusts in only HaKadosh And I think we've mentioned this before on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that the point in Musaf, where we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, okay, we're going to ask you and trust in you and only in you, the word Ochila Lakel. Inshallah, mimenu Bahaloscha, etc. Right? So, because I'm not hoping for help from any other source. Ki lecha Hashem hoicholti, sa'aneh ad Hashem elokai. You will, Hashem, Elokai, I judge. Hashem of Elokai of Din. So there's a lot that Am Yisrael and that we are going through currently. And we have to understand we've gotten ourselves into this. Again, exactly, and in what weaknesses spiritually our nation state and Israel have come low. We don't know why, but we know there clearly are Ma'asim Tovim that we need to put into effect and that we need to have. And very of returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and bringing others back, kind people, being kind to each other, so that people throughout this land see that the observant Jew is an image of goodness and sincerity. That's what, and as far as answering to all of the calumny and the lies and we read about and accusations leveled against, certainly there are those who are doing the answering, but for us, we really have to know that Kadosh Baruch Hu, we're turning to you and make this all better. Much as we have to do what we can, they have to have a shishtadlut, and you have to have spoken, to have diplomacy, and there has to be an army, and all of yes, it's all true. But each of us has to say, Hashem, Atos Ane Hashem. Okay. We'll study from Parshas Bahaloscha. Bahaloscha contains 2 psukim, about which we'll talk about what comes before those 2 psukim and what comes after those 2 psukim. 2 of the most important psukim in Torah, so important that, according to one opinion, they constitute a book of the Torah itself. And I'm referring to Vayihi bin Sa'ah Ha'aron, Vayomer, and the pasuk of V'nucha Yoma, those 2 psukim, which of course we take out the Sefer Torah, with Tzibur, and when we put it back after we have read through. Gemara in Maseches Shabbos points out that we look in the Chumash and in the written Torah scrolls are 2 letters Nun on either side. Backward Nuns. Beginning of Vayihi bin Sa'ah and after Shuva Hashem Rivavais Al Fayi. What are they doing there? Gemara, Shabbos, Kuf Tes Zayin, 1:16. Also, Allah HaKadosh Baruch Hu Simanios. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has placed certain signs to hint to something very important at the very beginning of Vayibin Saw and after Uvnucha Yomar. Lomar, remind us, She'ein Zem Mekoma. That's not where these two psukim belong. See, because they are describing how when we would move in the desert, the encampment would fold up and the Mishkan dissembled, each in place would rise up and begin to travel through the Midbar toward Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu would and pray, please HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rise up, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kum Hashem. Your enemies should be scattered. And those with enmity toward you should flee from before you. So this great and important prayer really would belong toward the beginning of Chumash Bamidbar, where the Degolim, where the encampment is this, where the Torah tells us which of the tribes and encamped in the desert with which other tribes. That configuration would then include a description of how you would be asked and called upon to rise up and travel through the desert. And the cloud, when the Anan moved, we knew we have to prepare and to move on, to travel forward. And then when we would do that, we would say, Kum Hashem v'yafut sa'ivech. That's where it belongs. And the Rabbeinu Bechai points out, if you count 50 paragraphs backward, 5 indeed at the pasuk of Vinasa of you have Machane Leviyah immediately surrounding the described in the Torah. And so 50 paragraphs earlier is where it should say that within Machane Leviyah was the Mishkan, and when Moshe would say, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu eivecha v'nusu misanach. That's the first opinion in the Gemara. What is missing, however, is any explanation as to, okay, if that's where it belongs, why is it here in Bahaloscha? Of course, the simple answer is, well, we're actually picking up and moving for the first time. Okay, well then, that it belongs early. If this is where we actually are picking up moving for the first time, so then claim that, well, this isn't really where it belongs 50 paragraphs earlier. Next opinion, Rebbe Yehuda Nossi says, Loimin Hashem. It's not correct at all. These backward nun are to indicate that this is a very important book unto itself. It's a bifnei atzma. Now, there's a famous about the pasuk in Mishlei, Chatzva Amudei HaShiva. Ziyum, the pillars, 7 pillars of Torah. What are the 7 pillars? Reshis, Shmos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, even Sahara. Number 5, Vayibin Sahara. Number 6, after Vayibin Sahara. Number 7, Chumash Devarim. So 5 books. This opinion maintains there are 7 books of the Torah. Now, it has a halachic consequence, because if a fire breaks out, God Torah that's in danger on Shabbat, so we will say under certain circumstances that even if we're going to carry the Sefer Torah out to save the Torah from being destroyed, what constitutes a Sefer? It has to have as many letters as there are in, because that's a whole parsha, that's a whole book. So we see that lahalacha, a book being as condensed as the 2 psukim of Vayhi ben Soar, is maintained halachically. It makes a difference in the halachic realm. So that means that Rebbe's opinion bears great. But again, does Rebbe explain to us verbatim why? He leaves it to us, rather, to understand, to mind the words of Ayib and so. Finally, the third opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is Asida Parsha Zo Shetiaker Mikan V'Tikater. Eventually, this parsha goes back to being where it belongs. It doesn't belong here. And the reason that it's here is Kasvakan Sikbein Puranus Rishon the Puranus Shniya. It's here right between the various mistakes we made in the desert, beginning how we picked up and left Har Sinai. Ketina Kabareach Mibeses tells us as we're leaving, Vayisu Mehar Hashem Derech Shloshes Yamim. It almost glaringly says that we picked up not from Har Sinai, Mehar Hashem. We were running away. That there was the slightest bit of 613. We stayed any longer. 615. 714, 715. We can go now. Now, that's an exaggeration. But there was the slightest sigh of relief. Ketina kabar tasefer, like a small child running. Oh God, the Belgian out of here, running home, going to play with my friends. Teachers do. Teachers do that also. Yeah. Oh. Well. Yeah. Okay. But no, teachers love to teach and they want to teach Torah. According to the Gemara, the cow wishes to the calf and the calf wants to pick. But I understand. Well, I also didn't mind when it was June. I said, okay, soon we'll have a little. But we're supposed to be at Sinai and Har Sinai. I don't want to leave Har Sinai. It's where the Torah was given. Where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us in such a special way. And yeah, maybe there will be 615. I can't wait. That was Puranus number one. Cause for punishment number one. And then immediately after, people are complaining about the travel. And then after that, give. Why we want steak to eat? And they want taiva. We have man. I want to have a bigger, better appetite. Yes, all the challenges that come along with what we have to make and what it has to be kosher and I have to be lifting it spiritually. Okay, but not man. Wow. That kind of sad, rebellious activity. The Ramban explains if you have three of these in a row, had the way we ran away from Har Sinai and then started complaining about our traveling, then add a menu and say where's the beef? What? So there's a concept in halacha called chazaka, right? When something happens three times in a row, a defining trait. So if it would have been three times, that would be defining us in a very bad way. Ramban talks about the idea of all one after the other in sequence, perfect. And again, the point is that one causes the other. If you run away from her and say, good, a little less of this pressure of being before God, that opens up a very, very dangerous way. That begins then to allow where we're going to complain. The traveling is a little difficult. Even though he is miraculously conveying us in one day, a 3 toward Eretz Yisrael. Again, we're human beings. And especially having not had much experience yet as a people, the depth to which we had yet to internalize all of Torah as a nation and be completely free of the effects of having been in Mitzrayim, it had not yet happened. Great generation of the Midbar. We have to have respect and understand how holy they were, and yet not worthy yet of coming into it. And yes, things get from bad to worse, as we're going to read. Aaron and Miriam speak ill of Moshe Rabbeinu. That does not somehow teach the lessons to the Nesiim who become the Meraglim, the Israel, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're in the desert for the next 13 years until this generation is gone. The younger inherit the land. Except for the women folk and the Levim. So, now understand that Vahi ben Sahara serves as the buoy, this life, this ability to survive, that it breaks up the Peroniot so that the three don't come one after the other. Clearly, the content of the Parsha of Vahi ben Sahara relates and speaks to the weaknesses inherent that caused us to have to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, Kuma Hashem, which means place. Don't go too far. Moshe is asking, Kuma Hashem, can mean to rise up, but it also means don't go too far. Baruch Hu, go too far. Taking us too far, too fast, because it also implies that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would take leave of that we're lagging behind. That in these 3 days travel, the Misonim saying, oh, it's so hard. And I'm sure it was, especially having been almost a full year at Har Sinai. It was 10 days shy of a full year encamped and not troubled by having to travel. And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs kumash. So when we look at the opinion of Rebbe, who said Bamidbar is actually 3 Sfarim in one. So we understand now that the Sefer of Bamidbar is a description of Am Yisrael, its best. Parshas we've read Bamidbar, Nasa, and Bahaloscha up until that point, and going swimmingly well. Described how we're going to be encamped, with whom, this Shevet, and how many men there were, and how they were prepared, each of the of Shevet Levi, each of the families of Levi, Gershon, Kasa, Merari, to carry the Mishkan, and then put it back together again. And everybody is assigned their tasks. There's nothing going wrong. Mistakes are being made. No averos are perpetrated. No are being aired. All good. Everything is as it's supposed to be, including the glory of the Neiros and the menorah and all of that, sublime, divine wisdom that emanates from the menorah, because it emanates from and inheres within all of Klal Yisrael, with which our part. So it's a beautiful time. And it's of how everything was supposed to be. So much so, if you look, interestingly, Moshe asks, come with us. His name is Yisro. And he says to him, we're going on to Eretz Yisrael, and all that good that we're going to receive, you'll be a part of it. We'll make sure to be very good to you, because Ki Hashem Diber Tov, Kadosh Baruch Hu has spoken of all the good that's coming our way. Now, before Matan Torah itself, Torah there also juxtaposes the presence of whom? Parshas, right before Matan Torah. Right before Bachodesh Hashlishi, B'tzeis B'nei Yisrael, Eretz Mitzrayim. Before describing us arriving at Sinai, who's with us? Israel. Because said by that is that it's a wonderful time for the Jewish people. And Yisro understands he should be a part. And then perhaps remained with us and not turned around and gone back to Eretz Midyan, things different. Which is what Moshe said to him, see things and explain them for our sake. This is a description of a very, very positive, a very good times. And the chatzotzros that are used, the horns, the trumpets that announce and herald the fact that we're moving on and traveling on into Eretz. They're all described in the beginning of Parshas Bahaloscha. Everything is going well. And everything is headed in the right direction. And those who were Tamil Nefesh, they were told how to have a Pesach Sheni. Everybody is doing what they can to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And everybody is being taught by Moshe Rabbeinu and following the mitzvos HaTorah. It's Am Yisrael in the Midbar, in the head of our era in the desert. Up until Vayihi bin Sahar. What's after Vayihi bin Sahar and Anuvanu Chayam? Immediately, the turn, drastic turn. Vayihi Yom Kippur said the complaints about the travel, and then Kivros HaTaiva, Hasa Kirba, Yisavu Taiva, Vayeshuvu, Vayivku, Bnei Yisrael. The heir of Rav. Yivku gam b'nei Yisrael. Vayamru, mi achilenu. Aaron and Miriam. Let's daber Miriam v'Aaron b'Moshe. Isha hakushis Hashem. About him not being with his, speaking ill of him, not understanding and appreciating his nevuah, of prophecy. Next parsha. Shlach lecha anosh, the Meragla. Terach and his rebellion. Terach of Adosa. The entire latter part, the book of Midbar, is describing what the reality in that Midbar. Once we started to come to and have the but also the responsibility of going into Eretz Yisrael. And in between, presenting what really saves the day is the Parsha. Because the Parsha of Vahi ben Sora says that even after we exhibit terrible weakness, Baruch, please stay with us. And and they are enemies from within, which is what the Erev Rav certainly means. They let them not have combination, growth coming together so that they could do harm, do damage, but break them up, conspire to cause us any harm. The Torah tells us that the travel took us derech shloshes yamim. We traveled a derech shloshes yamim, a path that would normally have taken us 3 days, and that the Aron Bris Hashem nosea lifneihem derech shloshes yamim, that the Aron preceded us. Rashi says it was not the Aron, but it was the broken luchas, shivrei luchas, the first luchas contained within them, preparing the way in all kinds of materially important and spiritually important, preparing for us, ahead of us, traveling 3 days ahead and beyond where we were. Now, what's the importance of these 3 days? Tzaddik HaKohen in Pri Tzadik tells us that the idea is 3 ideals, cardinal ideals, that life depends upon. The idea of Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferes. The idea of us, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And he shows us with Psukim how Yamim really people and what they stand for. That's what Derech Shloshis Yamim. Because Avraham was the paradigm of Chesed, and of steadfast Gevura, and Yaakov of glorious adherence and self-negation. Now, the reason that those 3 are so important, Tzaddik explains, is because otherwise we are overwhelmed by the problems which ultimately were after Bnei Yisrael started to travel toward Eretz Yisrael. As the Mishnah in Avos says, Hakina v'hataiva motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. Envy, desireless lust, and the honor destroy a person, literally destroy a person, such that that person's place in this world and in the next are lost. Kina, taiva, kavod, motzin, as adam. And what do we learn from Avraham Avinu? But taiva should be turned to helping others, to serving a Kadosh. That every desire should be turned that can benefit others rather than myself. And kina, envy, which is a terribly selfish kind of preoccupation, the battle against that kind of a Yetzer Hara, you take actually that same sense of will, determination to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to say no to what otherwise would be my intervention because I'm going to be vengeful. Very opposite of the midah of Esav. And finally, Yaakov Avinu. What does he say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he comes back after living with love and all those years? He says, Katonti mikol ha'emes. I'm so simply undeserving of all of that kindness you've bestowed upon me. And that's the opposite of kava. So from Yaakov, we glean how to live and how to counter all the urge that we might feel for the kinef kavod. And so we're traveling derech shloshes yamim bamidbar, and if we are deserving of Eretz Yisrael, then it's going to be ours, and we're going to be the embrace of these midos because of the embrace of these midos. And Avram carry us there. If we carry with us, they'll carry us into the land. But if we don't carry those midos with us, then they can't convey us into the land. And unfortunately, this was the imperfection that there was. There's this sense of kavod and issues of kavod, which was up in the discussions that Miriam had with Aaron about Moshe Rabbeinu. There was a problem with, the taiva issue, where it says, so we recognize that these the weaknesses that had yet to be conquered, but were still within us. They were still a part of us. He would not allow us to be that glorious people, miraculously conveyed to Israel without having to lift a finger, without having to bear arms. Originally, literally walk into Eretz Yisrael, and miraculously the land would be ours. But that was not to be. Our own is Moshe Rabbeinu begging HaKadosh Baruch Hu that even though we have enemies and they are within us, are gathered together and with us and all about us, scatter them. Don't let them influence us. Don't cause them to have enough power to influence us. And give us the ability to counter all of those enemies. And don't leave us, even though we're going to be affected. We're going to not rise up to the levels that you ask of us. We're not going to be at Sinai anymore. Yes, we ran away from Sinai. Moshe knew some of that which was inherently weak about our disposition, the way we're Ketinik HaBareach Mibeitz HaSefer. But he is saying, nevertheless, Kuma Hashem. Don't go too far away. Don't abandon us. And then, Uvenucha Yaimar, Shuva Hashem. Now, Shuva means to rest with us, to be with us. Again, Rivavais, Alpha Yisrael. Rivavais are 10,000 times 2. Alpha is 2,000. So from this we learn that there are 22,000 Yidden needed for the Shekhinah to be with us. That's as a minimum. That's what you need in the numbers of Bnei Yisrael. Now the reason that number is important is because it's 1,000 for each of the letters of the Aleph Beis. Chof Beis Osios and Rivavos Alpha Yisrael are 22,000. So a power of 1,000 times 22 indicates the presence of Torah in and all about us, even though we're not at Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu says, let it be that even though we're not at Sinai anymore, and at Sinai nothing that's happening wrong could have happened. Of course, that's why the first part of the book of Bamidbar, everything's going perfectly well. We're at Har Sinai. Nothing can go wrong. There are no bad and negative influences. It's the heyday of the Jewish people in the desert. But now, when we're challenged, we're beginning to travel, we're not at Sinai anymore, and all of that effect and the halo of Sinai is gone. Still, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't give up on us. In 22,000 of us, and in every 22,000 of us, let alone in all of the people, sum total, there's still the ability to receive Torah and to live Torah lives, and for the revelation, for the greatness to come out. Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal points out that the Ari teaches us that the word Aron, Aleph, Resh, Vav, Nun, in reverse, reveals Nora, awesomeness, the might and awe of HaKadosh Baruch. That's what the Aron represented. And he goes on to explain that idea of Nora is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us, and visibly so, in a Mishkan, in a Mikdash, where miracles are happening constantly, and everybody is aware and sensible, people realize that this is a holy place. I mean, you see miracles happening in the Mizbeach area, and in the holiness of the people, you know, and sense, as Yaakov Avinu said, "Ma'nora hamakom hazeh." Word is the key word, and Avraham Avinu says, "Bahar Hashem yeira'eh." That people will come here and witness this awesomeness of yours, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's if the Aron is with us. And that's if we deserve the Aron to be with us. But what if we are failing? And what if the Aron is away? There's a Churban, and there's no Aron anymore. So Yavi, the Gemara says, no longer phrased our daven said, Akel, Hagadol, Hagiber, Vahanora, which is how we daven every day. And we can't say Hanora because that awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is no longer visible to us. We don't experience it. So the Gemara says that Yirmiyah Navi said, we can't say no longer. We have those who trod upon Har Habayis with disrespect, utter disrespect, Baruch Hu and of Torah. We can't walk there, and they are sullying the holy soil of and Har Habayis. Where is your noros? Where's your until Anshe Knesset HaGedolah said, and they are praised for having Atara Liyoshna. They restored the glory with which we should regard, be aware of him. And they said, Adarab, Zohi Gevuras. He said, and they said, because you know what's the awesomeness of God? The Jewish people are still here. Is it not the Almighty's awesome power that maintains the one little lamb amongst the 70 wolves forever and ever? Is that not HaKadosh Baruch Hu's no ra'os? Is absolutely wondrous and awe. We should be in awe of the story of the without the Aron being with us. When the Aron rises up and Moshe calls out, don't go away, don't be too far from us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let the Shekhinah return and be with us. The Chidah says that this Parsha will, in the future, be books and books, reams and reams of, meaning that we will look at all of the story of the Aron not being with us, story of this long exile, and realize and see the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And a great Torah will be written, a great chapter of Torah will be written about every generation of these times where the Aron has not been with us. And we've put up the Sefer Torah and open up the Aron to take out the Sefer Torah, and we say, Kuma Hashem b'yafutza, and ask for the glory to be restored. Chapters and chapters and chapters will be written of HaKadosh Baruch Hu were revealed in our long history in which the Aron was not with us. And that's why Psukim are so important, because where before everything was the glory of how we were and how we wished you to be, and whereas after it's with all of the failings of Am Yisrael, not coming to Eretz Yisrael, in the middle is what will save us. Calling out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which Moshe says we must and we will. Shuva Hashem b'vavayseinu. Come back and be, because Hashem will do that. He will not abandon us. And we will see glory and greatness and his Noraos, those times when, unfortunately, literally, the Aron and the Luch in our midst. But Hashem was in our midst and remains with us. Of every generation, from the time of the Churban to this very day. May help us. And every time we take out a Sefer Torah and say these words, it should bring us. Remember that Zohar HaKadosh says that when we take the Sefer Torah out, gates of mercy in heaven open. As we say by Hebrew, so Hashem's love open for us. And that love should finally bring the times of the Gul Shalem.
The expression heyday, the hey